What's up everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make a classic Chinese red bean dessert. But I'm not just going to show you how to make it in one way, I'm going to show you how to make it in 3 ways. The first red bean dessert is a classic Chinese style homemade Hong Dao Jiu. The second red bean dessert that I'm going to make is found at Chinese dessert shops around Hong Kong, Singapore, and Malaysia. And finally, red bean on shaved ice, Hong Dao Bing. Now here are all the ingredients that we need. Not a lot. Of course we need red beans. And here are some things that you might have never even seen before. Right here is dried lily bulb. And this is lotus seed. And here is a dried, really old orange peel. And I'll explain to you why I know that this is really old. Okay, so even though this dessert is easy to make, there's a lot of pre-prep work to do. First thing to do is to wash the beans really well, and then just soak it overnight with enough water to cover it about ½ an inch to 1 inch on top of the beans. Then next day, you're gonna see that the beans have really puffed up, probably about double in size. So what you do now is drain it, stick the beans into a Ziploc bag, and stick it into your freezer. And you also have to soak the lily bulb and the lotus seed in water for at least 1 hour to 2 hours to get them all hydrated. Same with the orange peel, you have to soak it with some water, cold water, okay, for at least 1 hour or 2 hours, all right? The reason why you want to do this to your beans, which is, freeze them, is because you can save a lot of time. If you don't freeze the beans, it could take you about 2 hours, 2.5 hours to make the beans really tender enough to eat. So when you soak the beans in the water, right, when the water inside the bean freezes, it's going to create these little micro fractures within the beans. So that's why when you cook it this way, it'll take you like half the time. Because this type of dessert, originally when it was done, yeah, it took time. It took about 2 hours to 2.5 hours, okay? All right, so the first thing they have to do is to boil 1.5 liters of water. Okay, so while that is boiling away, I'm going to explain to you my 3 desserts. So the first dessert is going to be the classic style Hong Dao Jiu. In Cantonese, it's a red bean congee. Hong Dao means red bean and Jiu means congee, right? At least that's what's called in my home. I'm pretty sure it's called in other Chinese households too. For all the people who know, leave a comment down below and let me know what you call it at your household. But in Hong Kong, it is called Hong Dao Sa. So Hong Dao is red bean, right? And Sa means sand. Because in Hong Kong, there are a lot of dessert shops, and yeah, that's how you would order it, Hong Dao Sa. So the Sa refers to the beans. The beans, they sort of get grinded down into small little bits. So it kind of tastes, so it has a little pretty interesting texture to it. So that's the first style of red bean dessert that I'm going to show you. And the second style is sort of between a mix of Malaysia and Chinese. It's not going to have lily bulbs and lotus seeds. Instead, it's going to have sago, or sago, however you want to pronounce it, and topped with a little bit of coconut milk. And then the third Chinese red bean dessert that I'm going to show you is Hong Dao Bing. So Bing means ice. There is a way where you can add ice cubes to your red bean dessert, but instead I'm going to show you how to make a shaved iced version. Now to my non-Asian friends, red beans, dessert doesn't really belong in the same sentence, but trust me, it works out. The reason why these became a dessert is like, most other reasons. It has a very humble background. In Asia, there were a lot of farmers. So farmers, of course, they don't make a lot of money, right? And when they had sugar, it usually wasn't like a lot. So they would use red beans because red beans has a natural sweetness to it. Now, of course, this was a long time ago. And eventually, the Chinese introduced red beans to Japanese, and in Japan they called red beans Adzuki beans. And then you have all these wonderful Japanese treats and snacks using red beans today. But overall in Asia, beans are widely used for making desserts. Even in Thailand, there are these really awesome desserts that are shaped into tiny miniature fruits, and those type of Thai desserts are made with mung beans. And again, they're really sweet, but they're just really pretty to look at. Okay, so my water is boiling right now, so I'm gonna drop in my beans. And I'm gonna add my orange peel. Just gonna stir it up just to help break up the frozen beans. Like that. Okay. And I'm just gonna bring this back up to a boil. Now, as you can see, it's back to a full boil, and I'm just gonna lower my heat to a low heat. Okay, just like that. And during this cooking phase, I'm just gonna leave it alone for about an hour and 10 minutes. Now, the thing about making red bean dessert is that it's really, really hard to screw up. The only way that you can really screw this up is if you burn the beans, and that's it. Just make sure nothing is sticking to the bottom of the pot. So right here I have a piece of really old orange peel. I've never seen it this black before. Because normally the older it is, the darker it gets. Usually the ones that I buy, they're about 3 to 5 years old, and the color is about maybe like a dark brown to even a really dark orange. But this is, you know, it's almost nearly black. So this, I'm guessing, is about 8 to maybe 10 years old. Normally the older it is, the more it costs. But this bag here that I bought was about 100 grams and only cost me like less than $1. So, you know, yay Thailand. And then here are some ingredients that are kind of funky to, you know, my non-Asian friends, or maybe even some of my Asian friends. This is lily bulb. Like the name implies, it comes from the plant lily. This is the bulb where the flower like comes up. The Chinese have been eating these for like really, really long time. It's for like medicinal use. And then here is a lotus seed, which Thailand is very famous for. Lotus plants is also a very popular Chinese medicinal ingredient. Now, one thing about the lotus seeds that I have to find it first. I want to show you. Ah, here it is. Okay, yeah, you should split up your lotus seeds, and then right here, you see that? That is where the lotus plant shoots up. You don't want to eat these. These are bitter. Now, what do these ingredients taste like? To me, it's a bit of a nutty taste, but when I read about these, they say it has a natural sweetness too. To me, it doesn't taste sweet at all. Again, to me, it just tastes like nuts. Now, the next ingredient is, of course, the all-important sugar. Now, even though red beans has a natural sweetness to it, you need some extra sugar to enhance the flavor, okay? Now, right here is 70 grams of brown sugar. It's about a third of a cup. Now, traditionally, Chinese brown sugar is used, okay? Now, for me, I can't find it here in Thailand, so the closest substitute is brown sugar, because the main ingredient of Chinese brown sugar and normal brown sugar is cane sugar. That said, I'm not saying that they're both the same, okay? There's a very distinct flavor to Chinese brown sugar. It is due to the processing, because Chinese brown sugar, it comes in a slab, and they do something to it that has this really, you know, sort of unique caramel-like flavor. Okay, since we've got so much time to spare, let's make some sago for our red bean and sago dessert. I'm gonna boil up some water. When it starts to boil, drop in 4 tablespoons of sago, or sago, and reduce the flame to a low heat. And just let it boil for about 10 minutes. And remember to stir ever so often. When the 10 minutes are up, switch the heat off and just pop the lid back on for about 10 minutes and just let it steam until perfection. And when those 10 minutes are up, just strain your sago. Run it with some cold water to stop it from cooking. And you've got yourself some sago. Keep this in the fridge. Okay, so I'm gonna switch the heat off. And let's take a look at our red bean soup dessert. Check that out. The beans, by the look of it, they do look tender, but only one way to really know is to just give it a taste, right? Ooh, it's hot. That's fine. It's soft on the inside, but there's a slight firmness to it. So at this stage, it is ready for the red bean sago and also the hongdaobing, the red bean with shaved ice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate some portions for the red bean sago and the red bean shaved ice. Some water in there. Okay, so separate those out. And then I'm going to fish out the orange peel. Now you have the option of finely mincing your orange peel or tangerine peel into small bits and adding it back into the soup. But I don't like that. So I'm just letting you know, if that's the way you want it to do it, just mince it up, add it back into your soup. But for me, I'm just gonna throw it away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this slotted spoon, or you can use a back of a ladle and just mash it up. And the process of doing this, of releasing the starches from the beans, is you're gonna help thicken up the soup. And it is the small particles of the red beans that gives it that sandy texture. Now you can use an immersion blender. That's just extra work, meaning I have to wash something extra. I don't want to do that, so I'm just gonna do it this way. So this is the way to make hongdao sa. You just want to do it just enough until you're satisfied with the consistency. Just by the look of it, you can tell that the liquid is thicker. Look at that. See? There it goes. It's much more thick, right? And then I'm gonna switch over to the pot that I scooped out for my red bean sago and red bean shaved ice. As you can see, the liquid is more runny. Okay, so when that's done, I'm gonna drop in my lily bulbs and the lotus seeds. Whoops, there's a, there, get that out, drop it all in. And I'm gonna switch the heat on, stir in the lily bulb and the lotus seeds. But I'm not finished. I have to sweeten up my hongdao. For the first batch, I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of the brown sugar. That. And the rest I'm going to drop into this. Okay, so the sugars are added. Now I'm going to teach you something about making sweet desserts, okay? One really important ingredient for desserts is salt. Salt is a very important ingredient in the dessert world because it helps enhance sweetness and it also helps balance out the flavors. Almost every dessert that you eat, cakes, like red velvet cakes or chocolate cakes, or even just regular plain vanilla cakes, they have a little bit of salt. So for this batch, I'm just gonna add about half a teaspoon. And this is where you have to be really careful because there's a little bit less liquid in this batch right now, right? You have to be careful that it doesn't burn, okay? So just stir ever so often, and I'm gonna leave it like that on a low heat for about 10 minutes. And then for this batch, because there's less, we're gonna cook this for about 5 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes are up. The heats are switched off. So what's the most important thing that you do right now? Can you guess? Of course, you gotta taste it. So let's check out our first pot. As you can see, look at that. Really nice, thick. Gotta taste it, right? Needs a little bit more brown sugar. Let's taste the second one. This one's just right. This is the way my mom made her hong dao jiu. Oh, that reminds me so much of my mom's hong dao jiu. Check that out. Oh, that looks so good. Look at that. It's thick and sort of shiny from the sugar and the starch. Give it a taste. Wow. That's some good stuff. It's nice, a little bit sweet. And you can taste a natural sweetness coming from the red beans. I mean, this is a classic dessert that has been feeding generations, and it is served especially at the end of Chinese banquets for a reason, because it always had a history of being a classic Chinese dessert. So now I'm going to show you the red bean with sago, okay? It's the same deal. As you can see, this version is more runny and the beans are more whole. And then this extra batch here that I have, I'm gonna put it into the freezer so that it can cool down very fast. I'm going to drop in a pile of sago. Now there are recipes where you can actually just dump in the sago directly into the pot and let it bloom within that hot pot. But I prefer doing it this way because I have more control of how my sago comes out. And then finally, we drizzle in some coconut milk. Oh, check that out. Let's give this a mix and try it out. Wow. That coconut milk adds another level of sweetness. And the sago, just really refreshing. This is nice. I should make this more. All right, so here's one red bean dessert that I know everybody wants to see, and that is the one with shaved ice. So what I did here was freeze a block of ice in Tupperware, and it's a little bit tricky getting it out of the box, but it can be done. And just put a towel on the bottom so you can hold it so it can be more stable. And just use your knife and run it down the side. And I'm telling you, this actually takes quite some time. If you have the ice shaver at home, you're lucky. But this can be done. I'm gonna put some red bean on the bottom. Top it up with my shaved ice. Some milk. All right. Let's get this ice on top before it melts. It is pretty hot here in Thailand. Okay. And then here's something. This is like a candy syrup found all over Southeast Asia. I'm gonna pour some of that on. It tastes like candy. That's the best way to describe it. It's like candy, liquid candy. And then we top it off with some evaporated milk. And top it off with some more red beans. Okay, I'm sorry I can't make that look beautiful because it's hot. I'm inside a kitchen, there's no aircon. It's Thailand, so what can I say? But check that out. This is what I had as a kid growing up in New York City. But I think there was a place on Mulberry and Bayard Street. And then there's that little small tunnel with the Malaysian restaurant between Bowery and Mulberry. Inside that tunnel. People call it a tunnel. But this is what they served. This is what I bought when I was a kid. Whenever I go back to New York City, I never really see this around that much anymore. It brings back so much memories. I have another Hong Kong style dessert. It's got mango, it's got sago. So go watch that one if you want to make it. So thank you all for joining me. I hope to see you again next time. Take care. Goodbye.